All right, let's just jump right in. In a world jam-packed with heroes zapped by radiation or blessed by magic, we're going to talk about something, well, completely different. Imagine a hero whose powers come directly from German idealist philosophy. Yep, you heard that right. This is Derilla, the living philosophy. He's a character who doesn't just fight bad guys. He is a walking, talking argument about the very nature of reality. And look, to even begin to get a handle on this guy, you first have to understand the world he lives in. So forget everything you know about physics. Seriously, this quote you're seeing, it's not just some cool, dramatic line. It is the number one fundamental law of his entire universe. We're talking about Ethgard, a place where consciousness literally builds the world. So what does that actually mean, a world shaped by thought? Well, the consequences are just mind-blowing. The entire landscape, the very ground people walk on, it shifts and changes based on the collective mood, the zeitgeist, or the spirit of the times. Think about it. If everyone's feeling optimistic and innovative, the cities become these grand, soaring metropolises. But if fear and paranoia take over, the architecture itself becomes cramped, dark, oppressive. It's like reality is a public opinion poll, but the results become solid stone and steel. So, you're probably asking, how does a society even function like that? Well, it has its own set of rules, and they're pretty wild. A bank building, it only stays standing as long as people believe in the financial system it represents. The second that faith crumbles, poof, the whole building dissolves into mist. Even gravity is just consensus. It only works because everyone agrees it should. And what happens when you leave these cities of belief? You end up in the hinterland, a terrifying, shadowy wilderness where every single repressed fear, every nightmare humanity has becomes a literal, living, breathing monster. And yes, speaking to those monsters, they aren't just random beasts. They're born from that collective psyche, so they're just as conceptual. When you fight something out there, you're not just fighting a monster, you're literally fighting an idea. The Periton, for instance, it's not just some winged creature. It's the physical form of the monstrous shadow of your own self. And the Alp? That's not just some nightmare creature, it's the literal crushing weight of melancholy that pins you down in your sleep. Every single threat is a psychological battle made terrifyingly real. Okay, so if you're living in a world with these insane, bizarre rules, how do you even fight back? Well, that brings us to the man who's mastered the whole system. Because, you can't just punch an idea in the face. No, you have to turn ideas themselves into weapons. And this is the absolute core of Derilla's power: weaponized ontology. Now, ontology sounds complicated, but it's really just the philosophical study of being, of what it means to exist. So weaponized ontology is exactly what it sounds like. It's the art of making an argument so powerful, so logically sound, that reality itself has no choice but to bend to your will. This guy doesn't throw punches, he throws premises. He's not casting spells, he's presenting philosophical proofs that literally rewrite the world around him. Just look at his main weapon, the skezo staff. This thing is basically Hegel's dialectic made into a physical object. It's wild. One end represents the thesis, it creates matter, right out of thin air. The other end, that's the antithesis. It annihilates matter, just erases it from existence. And when he smashes them together, bam! He gets a synthesis, a massive shockwave of pure logic that completely rewrites the battlefield based on his new argument. It's absolutely insane to think about. And if that wasn't enough, he's also got this dark rune power. This comes from the philosopher Heidegger, who had this idea that language is basically the house of being. So for Derilla, these runes aren't just symbols he's drawing. They're the true names of concepts. So if he just writes the rune for stillness in the air, everything in that area, every object, every person just stops. All kinetic energy is gone. He is literally speaking things into and out of existence. Okay, so you have a guy who wields logic as a weapon and lives in a world literally made of belief. The big question is, where does someone like this even come from? Well, his origin story is just as complicated as his powers. It's actually a story with two completely different, totally conflicting layers. So on one side, you've got the public myth, this really romantic, heroic story of a nobleman on a quest for enlightenment. And then on the other side, you have the declassified truth. And that's a much grimmer story about a Cold War experiment that went horribly wrong. This clash, this gap between the legend and the reality, that is the absolute key to understanding who he is. Now, the story everyone knows, the public myth, is that he was a guy named Baron Friedrich von Nichts, a brilliant aristocrat obsessed with solving the ultimate philosophical puzzle, trying to see the world as it truly is, beyond our own limited perceptions. And the legend says he performed this radical ritual to erase all his mortal limits, trying to become a being of pure, unstoppable will who could shape reality directly. It's a pretty epic and noble story, right? But the declassified truth is so much darker. His real name was Dr. Johannes Diogen, a philosophy professor who was roped into a secret West German supersoldier program. They put him in a coma, had him live in this perfect simulation of Enlightenment Europe, all to build up what they called psychic optimism. But the whole thing was sabotaged. The director, this guy codenamed Mephisto, shattered Diogen's belief in reason inside the simulation. And right at that moment of total psychic breakdown, the trigger word they were going to use to activate him was inverted. And this is the whole tragedy right here. Instead of being anchored by the word Vernunft, which means reason, he was hit with its opposite, will, meaning will. He woke up a completely fractured guardian, his mind shattered and bound to the spirit of negation. And this fractured origin, being born from this broken ideal, it's not just his own personal tragedy. It's actually a perfect mirror for the nature of his entire universe. See, his real fight isn't just against supervillains. It's against the fundamental, deeply pessimistic nature of existence itself, the very thing that created him. So what's that cosmic nature? Well, the engine that drives this entire reality is based on Schopenhauer's concept of the will to live. And this isn't some benevolent, conscious force. No, it's a blind, irrational, totally insatiable drive that exists in everything. And all it wants to do is be. Just survive, reproduce, and continue. For no reason, with no higher purpose at all. It's basically the biological imperative, but scaled up to become a universal law. And what happens when your entire universe is run by a blind, pointless drive? You get constant suffering. In this world, suffering isn't a bug in the system, it's the primary feature. Existence is just this endless pendulum swinging back and forth between the pain of wanting something and the crushing boredom of finally getting it. Everyone is just a puppet of this cosmic force, trapped in a meaningless, endless cycle. And naturally, a universe this bleak needs a villain to match. Enter the pale cynic. This guy is the living, breathing embodiment of that whole pessimistic philosophy. He doesn't need to throw a punch. His main weapon is an aura of pessimism. He literally forces his opponents to confront the absolute futility of everything they're doing, convincing them their struggle is pointless until they just shut down. I mean, how do you fight an enemy who can prove to you there's no point in fighting at all? Okay, so let's tie all of this together. We've got a world made of pure ideas, a hero whose powers are philosophical arguments, an origin story born from a botched experiment, and a universe that's basically designed for suffering. So, what's the big takeaway here? What does it all mean? At the end of the day, Derilla is so much more than just a superhero. He's what you could call a philosophical engine. He is the living, breathing embodiment of German idealism's biggest claim, that our minds, our ideas, aren't just part of reality, they are the fundamental reality. His entire story, his very existence, is designed to make us think about consciousness, the true power of belief, and that universal struggle to find meaning in a cosmos that seems to have none. Really, the whole story of Derilla is this incredible thought experiment. It kind of suggests that maybe our own reality is also built on a powerful argument, an argument we all make every single day with our beliefs. And that leaves us with a pretty challenging question, one that gets right to the heart of his own tragedy. If your reality can be rewritten by a powerful argument, what are the ideas that define yours? And maybe more importantly, are they strong enough to survive when everything falls apart? What happens when your reason is shattered, and all you have left is will?